what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick introduction overview. Phil and myself are going to box and cox on this one. I'm going to do a bit, Phil's going to do a bit and come back to you. We're aiming to finish a timely way, but we're always willing to stay on a bit later for those who don't have to rush off so that they can ask questions at the end. But sometimes our webinars are 2 hours, and that's a bit more comfortable, but these ones been scheduled for 1.5, so we'll do our best to get through things without it sounding like we're racing to the finish. So what I'd like to do is just very briefly just ask those of you who are online with us to just unmute yourselves just to say hi, your name from, because often people are from Dubai, but we've had people from all over the world. So just to know where you are, those of you who are already on board. Sabine, you need to unmute yourself.
Right.
Okay.
I'm Sabina Hartman. I'm German by birth, and I was raised in the US, and I live in Dubai.
Great. Very succinct. Thank you, Sabine. Okay, who's next?
Hi, this is Mohammed with you.
Hi, can you tell us where are you?
I'm from India. I work in Dubai since 7 years.
Okay, so you're in Dubai as well. Great. Okay. And who else? We've got Mick.
Hi, this is Kimo. I'm in Dubai. I'm from Dubai.
Kimo. So I'm saying it correctly, am I, Kimo?
Yes, yeah, correct. You get Kimo. That's correct pronunciation. Thank you. Thank you.
And do you have any video that we can see you on?
In actual, you want to make that video on? Yeah.
Yeah, it's always nice to see who we're talking to, especially as we're talking here about psychology, and it's good to see people's faces. And there are a few things I want to demonstrate, and if anyone wants to check, you know, if we do an exercise, am I doing this, etc. So it's good to see faces if you can. And we know, as I said, that you're alive and well, and that you're with us, and that you haven't left the room. So if you've got a video to put on, that'd be great. Mick, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Great. Do you have a video that we can see you on?
I'll try. Let me see.
Okay, if you can, that would be lovely. Okay. Yeah. We don't mind you switching off your audios, especially if there's feedback or noise going on around you in the background. Then you can just unmute yourself when you want to talk to us. Okay. And Hira, you're...
Hello, this is Hira from Pakistan.
From Pakistan. Are you there right now in Pakistan, or are you in Dubai?
I'm in Pakistan now. I'm studying BS Applied Psychology.
Okay, and whereabouts are you in Pakistan?
I'm in Multan from Pakistan now. I'm studying it in Bahauddin Zakriya University.
Okay, I don't know that one. So which city are you in?
I'm in Multan. I'm from Multan.
Oh, you're from Bhutan. Okay. So we, Phil and myself, have done some really nice trainings. We really enjoyed them in Karachi, and we have a graduate of ours who's in she's in Islamabad, and she keeps threatening to bring us over. So, but at the moment, our visits have been over the last few years have been mostly in Karachi. Okay, so Multan. Phil is correcting my pronunciation. Thank you. His geography is probably better than mine, you see. Okay, and we've got Mohammed Arfat. Was that you we heard from before, Mohammed?
Yeah.
Great. And Hira. So Hira, you are?
Yeah, I'm here.
And where are you?
I'm in my study hall, so I cannot on the camera if there are some issues.
That's okay. That's a shame. It'd be nice to see your lovely face, but we'll just make do with your voice for now. So thanks. Okay, so let's get started.
So nice of you. Thanks.
Okay, so as I said, we like it if you can put your cameras on, those of you who can. It's great. I've got Sabine just under me so I can see her. Nobody else has put their faces on. I think sometimes people think they have to look glamorous or dressed up for going to a webinar, but you really don't. We're just in my study here. And we're in Morocco, in case you weren't aware of that. We're just outside Essaouira in Morocco at the moment. So our job today is to give you a brief overview of energy psychology. We're only going to be able to touch on a few points to give you some of the basics. And what we'd like to do is there are lots of overlaps. There's lots of synergy. Some techniques get practiced in all sorts of ways, in different modalities, in psychology, in energy work. So what we've done is kind of given 3 broad categories, which is traditional, intuitive, and scientific. These approaches to mind-body healing, and there's a Buddha quote, which as far as we're aware is a genuine one, not one of those from the fake Buddha quote site, which says, "Believe nothing I say, weigh my words like gold, and work it out for yourself, come to your own conclusions." So we put that in because we don't want you to feel that we are pushing any one particular method. Over the many years, more than 5 decades now, Phil and I have both studied different kinds of systems and practiced them. And we're very eclectic. We're integrative. We like to use what works, basically. And that's what we teach in our various courses, our short courses to give people personal and professional development, and also our qualifying courses for people to become UK accredited therapists and counsellors. So this is an introduction to the energy psychology, which there is actually an intensive course that's going on the 18th and 19th of June that we're running. Online course, and that will be from 11 a.m. till 7 p.m. Dubai time on the Friday and the Saturday, and that leads to a certificate in the Foundations of Energy Psychology. So we'll have a slide about that at the end, but I just want to mention it now in case any of you have to leave or drop off before we finish. So these are the way we've categorized them. Traditional, and that will incorporate things like yoga, various different branches of yoga, and also what we refer to sometimes as Chinese yoga. It's also in Japan, Qigong exercises, and all of these traditional methods, a number of the elements of those are incorporated into intuitive and meridian therapies, which we'll be talking about later. Under the intuitive category, we're going to mention Donna Eden. Energy Medicine is the name of her book, and confusingly it's the name of at least one other book as well, and we'll mention both of them. Gary Craig, who was responsible for developing what's now known as EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, which actually came from originally from another similar system, but he developed it, system by Dr. Roger Callahan called thought field therapy. And so that will come under what we call intuitive, though there are also overlaps with the science there too, because a lot of EFT is now starting to be tested scientifically and found to work. And we've got the scientific, we've got Selden and Becker, James Oshman, Lynn McTaggart, and also, again, no, we won't be going in detail into these, but we'll be mentioning them in more detail on the course itself, biofeedback and brainwave entrainment. So I'm going to hand over to Phil now to come and say hi, and he'll take you through this slide and through into the traditional approaches initially. So let's swap places, shall we? Okay, on the slide.
Hi. So Layla's already sort of introduced me, so I won't say anything more about myself. My goodness, everybody's so shy, aren't they? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to, as Layla said, we're going to run you through. We've got sort of 3 general categories. We do this partly because there are so many different things available nowadays that didn't used to be available. So many different ideas and systems and so on, and often these things get kind of jumbled up by people. So we like to give an overview, and then in the course itself, then we can work within particular categories. So here's the okay, so here's the first slide we want to show you. We're talking about traditional. Now we're quoting somebody. Sorry. Oh, Lena's just pointed out that we didn't get the energy deniers in first. Yeah. Okay, so we just like to highlight this. That there are people in the world who say that all of this stuff is absolute nonsense, and it doesn't matter how many personal experiences people have had, and it doesn't matter how much scientific research has been done. There are people who still maintain that the whole thing is nonsense. There's no such thing as energy or, you know, anything kind of at all spiritual or subtle going on in the world. Everything's mechanical and physical. And we just mentioned 3 of these people because it's we think it's useful to know about that view. Richard Dawkins, you might have heard of, he's become very famous over the last few years for trashing just about everybody and everything that doesn't go along with this completely mechanistic and materialistic way of looking at things. And he's very influential. He's what's known as a radical atheist. So a radical atheist is not just somebody who doesn't believe in God, but it's somebody who really sort of thinks that no one should believe in God and is busy going around, trying to convince people that that is the best way of thinking. Susan Greenfield, who's a neuroscientist, and considers that all the kind of experiences that people report, all the sort of spiritual and inner experiences, like people often report tunnels and white lights at the time of death, she says that's all simply the brain doing what the brain does, and no other conclusion should be drawn. And then there's Darren Brown. If you haven't seen Darren Brown before, he's really worth having a look at. Darren Brown does many of the some kind of energy process or sort of psychic process, and he says that none of them are at all anything like that. They simply are psychological processes, ways of manipulating people's minds. So if you look at those people, that gives you an idea, if you like, of the competition, the other guys, the other side of the coin. Now, moving away from them and into what we like to consider traditional, there is a very, very, very ancient concept about how all this stuff works. It goes back a very long way, literally thousands of years, of course, and in many different cultures. We mentioned this guy, Sri Swami Yukteswar, who was working in the late 19th, early 20th century, because he set out this idea of the great ages. Now, again, you'll find this idea in many other traditions and cultures and so on, but he set it out quite succinctly that there are huge ages, cycles of 24,000 years, approximately. It's a bit hard to measure once you get beyond 24,000. What's important, what's significant about this is that what we think of as spiritual and energy and all these kind of things is not only that, but it's also a physical event that's taking place in the universe, in the cosmos. And that physical event is that somewhere there is a center to the universe, and from this center there is a certain energy which is continuously being pushed out into the rest of the universe, like ripples from a stone that's been dropped in still water. The thing is, because everything rotates, because our solar systems rotate, hi there, Majid, because our solar systems rotate, and because our galaxies rotate, our planets rotate, because everything rotates, there are times when we're closer and further away from this central point. So in this system, what we're saying is that during the periods of time when we're furthest away, then you have the least spiritual times, the least understanding. And during the times that we are closest, you have the best understanding. It's easier for people to understand these things like energy and so on. You'll see the date 1894 marked on there, because according to Yukteswar, that's the time at which we entered into this phase we're in now, which in Sanskrit is called the Dwapara Yuga. And what characterizes the Dwapara Yuga is people start discovering electricity. And electricity meaning all the kinds of electricity, from the simple kinds that make your light bulbs work up to the really subtle kinds that heal people and so on. So that's the concept there. Now, this is, if you look into his work and work within that tradition, you'll find these sort of concepts. As we said, we're just going to touch on them. Basically 5 electricities. Now, you find people have different names for these things, but basically 5 kinds of energy that move through the body, that move through nature, and that can be accessed by people, that can be developed, and that have different effects. Now, one thing we like to point out is that there seem to be 2 main traditions that have come down to us through time. One of those traditions is in India, where they talk about prana, and the other tradition is China, which then went on to Japan and Korea and so on, where they talk about qi. Now, it seems like they're talking about more or less the same thing, but in different ways. And we just like to highlight that because, again, there's something that there's often some confusion about. Literally, I've been told, and I don't speak or read Sanskrit, but literally, I've been told that in Sanskrit, prana actually means breath or air. So I'm sure there are many other people that would tell you it might mean something else. A characteristic of prana is that it comes in, it's present everywhere all the time, as people often say about this kind of energy, present everywhere all the time. It comes into the human body through the nose and into the lungs, and from the lungs is distributed throughout the rest of the body. So people who are completely materialists say, well, that's oxygen, that's what oxygen does. But then what we're saying in this tradition is that there might actually be something else within that oxygen. There might be something else that accompanies the oxygen. These things are subtle, and so it takes time and it takes effort to be able to understand them sometimes. You'll notice this diagram we use here is the one, see the cursor moving, is one of the diagrams that shows all of the energy centers, including the ones that are in the arms and the legs, and also shows the so-called nadis, the subtle currents that go out beyond the physical body and indeed the etheric body, the astral body. Now, one of the ways that people talk about this, people that get into yoga and meditation and so on, they're always talking about prana. One of the things is that traditionally the concept of prana is that it's not just one thing, but when it comes into the body, it's divided into 5 different kinds of prana. These are known as the vayus, or the winds, or airs, and these travel through the body and they move through the body in different ways and do different things. So it's not just a matter of more prana or less prana. There's also the concept of how they move in different ways and they have different functions. So if we go across to the Chinese, you'll find that they have a kind of a different concept. There's still some idea of air or something subtle in this concept, but the Chinese, very different kind of concept. And if you look at this diagram, this is actually the Chinese character for qi, and what this shows is it shows rice being cooked. So this bit here is the fire, this is the tripod over the fire, this is a grain of rice, and this is actually the steam that comes up from the rice as it cooks. So at last we got to something like air. But what the Chinese are saying, in a very sort of practical down-to-earth way of looking at things, is you have to refine this energy in your body. Now there's a whole system that develops that in many different ways, and there are certain techniques, and we'll show you one of them during this webinar today. But the significant thing here is that we're talking about something that's already innate. There's something already in people, and that this can be developed by certain practices. Now we talked about how in the traditional Indian system we have 5 different kinds of energy in the body, and we'll come back to that for the Chinese system. Because it seems to me, you can go around and you can look at all these things, and it seems to me that it's the same thing that's being referred to, but that same thing is, 1, represented in different ways, and 2, is often worked with and developed in different ways. So because of those differences, sometimes there's confusion, and sometimes there's also the potential for a synergy that perhaps wasn't there when people were just stuck with one system or nothing. So you've probably seen these diagrams before. If you've ever had acupuncture or shiatsu, you've certainly seen them. So according to the Chinese, there are 14 meridians that run through the body, 14 major meridians. If you think back on that previous Indian diagram, it shows you that there are meridians running through the arms and legs and so on, which are not often focused on or emphasized in the traditional Indian system, in traditional yoga. Usually the emphasis is on the main chakras, and that's that. They don't often go into these other areas. In the Chinese system they do, and in this diagram you see what's known as the small heavenly cycle, or the microcosmic orbit, which is 2 major meridians that run, one along the back of the body up to the crown of the head, up the spine and to the crown of the head, and then the second one that runs also from the same point in the perineum, also up to the crown of the head. Now, this is where the Chinese system differs somewhat from the Indian system, because in the Indian system they're saying the same thing. Yes, there is an energy here, often called Kundalini. That's your fire in the Chinese pictogram, often considered to be a form of heat, form of energy that's warm. And in the Indian system, what you do, your aim is to bring this up in a straight line through the sushumna, through the central channel to the crown of the head, and then out of the crown of the head, which is where bliss resides and where you experience all these wonderful spiritual things. The Chinese have a slightly different take traditionally. Say Chinese, I should perhaps say Taoist, that might be the correct word. Because what they say is, what we need to do is we need to form a circuit. So we need to, yes, we need to raise this energy up to here, but then we need to reverse the direction of this one, and then we circulate this energy. When this energy has been circulated for long enough and is strong enough, Then what we do is we push it through the rest of the meridians, and this has a healing effect. And when we've done that, then we're ready to raise the energy through the central channel and then go out the top. So there's a slight difference in the way that that they conceive of these things in these two different cultures and civilizations. Now, as for who's right or what the truth is, I think this is something people can only find out for themselves. You can read all the books you like, you can get other people's ideas and opinions, you can do all these things. Unless you actually experience these energies in your own body, then it remains theoretical. One of the problems that sometimes it's easy also for people sometimes to imagine that they're experiencing things that they may not be experiencing. So that can be tricky sometimes. You probably also, if you know anything about acupuncture and shiatsu and so on, you would have come across these. Here's your 5 energies again, very similar to the idea in the Indian system. And for the Chinese, there's an organ and an element. You'll find the elements also in the Indian system. There's an organ and an element that relates to each of these kinds of energy and to the major meridians. And the idea is to circulate this energy through these 5 different elements. And again, if that's done, then you allegedly have health, and that leads to the possibility of spiritual experience. And the emotional aspect, which is also very important. Now, personally, I study these things. I've studied these things in a few different ways, but the most important person I studied them with was somebody called Master Mantak Chia, and I became a trainer in that system, known as the Universal Healing Tao. And this system, I also trained as a yoga teacher many, many years ago, so I have a view of both sides of how this can work. In the Healing Tao system, there are a series of levels and there are a series of practices for each level, which are intended to enable you to move forward steadily and not get thrown off track. Because one of the things that does happen is sometimes people get confused, and perhaps especially nowadays when there is so much different information coming at people. You can go online and in 5 minutes you can be doing Kundalini exercises that for thousands of years were top secret and you had to be initiated into after the master was convinced that you were able to handle it. And people do sometimes have problems with some of these things. There's even something called a Kundalini syndrome. So it's really worth knowing about the broad view and looking at ways that perhaps one can develop without becoming unbalanced, because that is a possibility. So here's the basic level of the Healing Tao system, which although Mantak Chia calls it Universal Healing Tao and so on, he learned from a master, who learned from a master, and this is a very, very old traditional system. You will find variations if you look around, but basically always the same thing. Here goes the cuckoo clock. We have a cuckoo clock here in our office in Morocco, but the cuckoo comes from Dubai. And for some reason, it still does, and this is really mysterious. I haven't been able to get to the bottom of this one. Doesn't matter what we do, this cuckoo is on Dubai time. So that's what we adjusted. What time was that in Dubai? Because I wasn't 7 o'clock. Oh, 7 o'clock in Dubai. Right. No. So you're all wondering about dinner by now, then, unless you had it early. So in the Healing Tao system, what happens is there is a basic practice called the inner smile, where you start to generate positive energy inside, and this is very closely related to emotion. Then we have something called the 6 healing sounds, and the 6 healing sounds also correspond to certain practices within the Buddhist system to transform what they call the 5 poisons, or the 5 defilements. There's lovely terms for these things. And then goes along with that is this thing I just mentioned, is generating energy to move into the microcosmic orbit. So if you're going to move energy, first you have to have some energy. And so the Taoists say there's a very simple way to do this. So I think this is where we would like to introduce people to this practice. So this is one of your takeaways from this webinar. We were going to do this at the end when we talked about everything, but then we thought, well, why not just do it, somewhere near the middle? And so we'll just introduce you to the concept and we can show you this practice. Now, this practice is so simple and so easy and so safe and good for you that you can do it anytime, anywhere, anyhow, with really not any special conditions. And Mantak recommends and says that he developed it in this way so that anybody can do it anywhere. If you only have 5 minutes, you can sit down and do 5 minutes. Anywhere you like. So here's the way the inner smile goes. Now, I don't think I've got anybody on video now. Everybody's turned off their video, which is, oh, there's one. We've got one. Hi, Majid. Is it Majid? Is that how we say your name? Can you hear me, Majid? You can. Okay. Thumbs up is fine. Right. Thumbs up. Hi. Thumbs up is fine. I just like to check occasionally. Well, you're the only person who's on screen at the moment, Majid. So congratulations. That makes you one in a million. And that means that I will be watching you. No, please keep it on. I wish other people would turn theirs off. But please keep it on because it means I will be watching you. I would watch anybody who was on screen just in case I can spot something that I can suggest or recommend as we go through this. So stay on, and if I see something funny happening, I'll be able to tell you. Okay, now here's the process. You won't be seeing me because you'll have your eyes closed, which of course is always another good thing, because I always like to point out to people that if they can see me, it means they haven't closed their eyes, so it's time they did. So here's a nice simple process. So first of all, close your eyes. That's the first thing we need to do. Just close your eyes. That's right. Now take a nice, big, long, slow, deep breath and relax. This is the beginning of everything. It's a big, slow, deep breath and relax. First thing we do. So just sit back and relax wherever you may be, however you may be. And what I want you to do, as you allow yourself to breathe nice and slowly and deeply, is keeping your eyes closed to focus your eyes upwards in your head to the point that people call the third eye. So that point just right between your eyebrows, focus there and imagine that you have a screen there on which you can make a picture. But because of course you do have a screen there on which you can make a picture. And what I want you to do next is to make a picture of something that makes you feel good. Now, regardless of what other feelings or thoughts you have, just like when you switch on the TV, the program that's there is the program that's there. It doesn't matter what you think or feel, that's what's there. That's what we want you to do. Just switch on something on that screen that makes you feel good. Now, this can be anything at all. It doesn't matter, so long as it gives you a good feeling. And by a good feeling, I mean a feeling that makes you smile. So if you start to feel something happening in the corner of your mouth now, if you start to feel a slight contraction of your cheek muscles, and maybe the corners of your eyes going a little bit crinkly, if you start to feel a certain lightness that maybe wasn't there before, then that means you have a good image. That's it, what good images will do for you. Because your brain can't tell the difference between what it sees outside and what it sees inside. So just focus on that good image, someone you love, some event that you like, your favorite food, a place you love to go, anything you like. And as you focus on that, notice how it feels. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do in a moment is to collect that emotion. Now, really focus on the emotion that you have now, the good emotion that you have from that image, and then still keeping your eyes closed, turn them down under your closed lids, and start to send the energy from your smile, smiling energy, down through your throat, and down into your chest, down through your lungs, through your heart, and all the way down the front of your body, all the way down until you come to the navel, past the navel, and then come all the way right down to the perineum. So that's that point just between your legs, the perineum. And now focus there for a moment, and then bring your attention right back up to that screen in the center of your forehead. And again, make that image, that thing that makes you smile, that makes you feel good. And now this time, what I want you to do is I want you to send it down through the center of your body. So turn your eyes down under your closed lids, and get that emotion, that physical sensation, smiling energy, and push it down. So once again, down through the throat, and then down into your internal organs. So it can go down into the stomach, it can go all the way down into the intestine, all the way round to the kidneys, all the way down through the very center of your body, until you reach the perineum, where there's already some smiling energy waiting, and those two can combine. And now just turn your eyes up again under your closed lids. Focus on that smiling energy, collect it together, and this time send it backwards. Send it back over the top of your head and then down your spine. And send it all the way down the spinal discs, all the way down your vertebrae, one by one by one, all the way down to the very bottom, down to your sacrum and your coccyx, until it reaches the perineum, where there's already lots of smiling energy, and focus on all of them connected together. And now there's one final thing that we're going to ask you to do. Start again with that energy, connect that smiling energy up in your forehead, feel the effect it has on your face, and this time, as you turn your eyes down, send it down 3 channels at the same time, down the front, down the center, down the back, like a waterfall, all the way down. Feel it rippling down, all through your body, all through your internal organs, your spine, all the way down to the very center, at the bottom. And when you collect it all there, just bring that energy to somewhere that it's good to keep it, somewhere that it's safe and good to keep it. So bring your attention up to your navel and just put one palm over your navel and the other palm on top of that first palm. Focus there. Feel the warmth. Feel the warmth. Feel the energy collecting and centering there. And you can just rotate it a few times to make it stronger and to lock it in place. You can even imagine that you're doing something that locks it in place. So that's the place to save your energy and collect your energy. It's the safe place. And you can always access it there when you need it. So that's the first of those techniques. And then just rub your palms together and bring your palms up to your eyes, place them over your eyes. When you're ready, take a deep breath and just bring your attention back to where you are, back to where we are together in the webinar. Yeah, and if anybody would like to make any observations and tell us maybe what that was like for them, we can have a couple of minutes in which you can do that. Okay, people feeling a bit shy. You do have to keep moving because we still. Well, Majid, the only person showing themselves to us. So, would you like to give us any feedback on that?
I think I would need.
You're sitting in the car.
Yeah. I think I would need to practice it a little bit more because, like, I was getting a bit confused. First, you harness the smile in the third eye, then you drop it down. But then at some point, I think you were saying to bring it up and down the spine, not the front. So
that's the third one, is down the spine, yeah.
So it's supposed to go down from the front and then up from the spine and then rotate it.
Oh, I see your confusion. Well, your confusion is a really good kind of confusion because what you're doing is you're actually moving ahead to the third practice that we do in the system. You can see on the screen there, the Microcosmic Orbit. So that's the third practice. So what we recommend first of all is you do this for a bit, and then you do the healing sounds, and then you do the Microcosmic Orbit. But that's interesting. What we were saying to you here is we were saying, first of all, send the energy just down the front of the body. Then you go back to the forehead and you get some more energy. You send it down the back. And then you go, sorry, the center. And then you go, so first down the front, second time down the center, third time down the back, and then the fourth time, all three at once. So that you have a sensation of like a waterfall, just flowing all the way down. One of the good things about this is a bit like homeopathy. You can't actually do it wrong. So whatever you did is going to have had an effect and is going to have made something happen.
Okay, I have another question, which is in all the books I read, even for the students of Mantak Shia, and they pretty much everyone said that for most people, the microcosmic orbit is either blocked or quite weak. So do you have some recommendations on how to open it up?
Oh, yes. Yes, that is a consensus. I think you'll find right across the field. Just about everybody says that. They say the same thing about Kundalini. You know, if we were all unblocked and all the energy was flowing, you know, we'd all be having a perfect time. So it does, and we all have perfect health. That's the theory. You know, we'd be perfect on every level, you know, psychologically, emotionally, physically, everything would be fine. So yes, usually there are blocks, and you can become aware of those blocks. If you already know Mantak Chia's work and you've looked into this kind of thing, then you'll be familiar with those ideas. Yeah, I would say that's 100% true. Some people more than others.
Basically, about a year and a half ago when I started getting into this, I was doing like a whole bunch of things that are not structured. It was kind of random. This is why I don't really quite understand which one worked. But to give you an idea, within about a span of a couple of weeks, all of a sudden I found my digestion is so much better, and my energy levels are so much better. I started to lose weight really fast, and I started to grow muscles, even though I wasn't actually working out at the time.
Wow.
I would wake up and I would wake up, literally, my muscles are tight, as if I had worked out, even though I hadn't. And I don't know what I did that caused it, but then gradually.
But you were doing a lot of different things at the same time.
Yeah, when you're trying a whole bunch of different things at the same time, you don't know which one works. And the worst part is like I can't even wrap my head around it. But what I do know is that when the microcosmic orbit is either closed or weakened, you have poor digestion, poor recovery, and all that. So if you can give us like an idea or some exercises that we can do to open it up.
If you've already, when you say you did a lot of different things, what other different things were you doing?
Because I'm a Wing Chun technician, so we have our form. It's called Union Tao, and it basically is designed to run energy through your energy meridians and condition your body for combat and for recovery from that. And at the same time, we usually do it as a motion, but not with like combined with breathing and energy awareness and all that. So I was like doing
something you already were doing.
But I was doing it wrong because I didn't understand the concepts of energy and breathing behind it. We were just basically doing the motion. And doing motion is good. It conditions your ligaments. You get some benefit. It conditions your body to react to the combat motions, but it doesn't give that heightened recovery rates and heightened health. And so when I learned the whole Mantak Chia things along with a whole bunch of other things, I was like doing mixes all left and right of a whole bunch of different things.
Right. Okay.
All over the place. And at some point, I was freestyling. You know, so it's just do completely
I would
random.
recommend that you take a very kind of systematic approach because, like you say, something works, and you don't know which one it is. So I would recommend you do one at a time. You know, do something for like 3 weeks and nothing else, and see what happens. Then do something else for 3 weeks and nothing else. But in each case, just make it nothing else. Just do one system. A bit like, you know, when people do elimination for food, you know. But you know the thing for food allergies, when you do elimination, you know, you just check one food at a time, right? And then if you get an effect, then you know that's the one you shouldn't eat. So this is the other way around. If you get an effect, you know that's the one you should.
What I can tell everyone around here, and I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating. Something clicked, and it was physically.
Well, the sooner you find out what it is, the better. We're going to have to move on now, Mazid, because of the timing. But if you would like to, after this, if you want to email me or WhatsApp me or whatever, then we can always, give you a bit more of anything that might be useful. And of course, there is the course, you know, which you might also find is appropriate, especially when it comes to things like, like
conflict.
Homing in on something that you might consider a blockage or that might be a blockage. But sorry to pause you if we're in a, if we were in a real live seminar or something, we could go and talk about this at lunch or whatever, but you know, we do have to move on a bit now. But thank you, that was very interesting and useful feedback. Okay, so there's
10 मिनट ब्रेक दिया, इजिप्शियन साला पागल हो गया, कितने क्वेश्चन कर रहा है, लास्ट में पूछता कहाँ है कॉर्नफ्लेयर, ये मिक्स है वो ऑल, मतलब कॉर्नफ्लेयर वो आटा है ऑल पर्पस में हो रहा है, तो फिर मैं हाँ ऑल पर्पस वो
okay, so thank you.
ये मैदा क्या यूज करके करते हैं?
दोनों मिक्स करके डाले भी तो चलता।
नहीं वो तलने के लिए तलते सब कड़क को भाजियों के लिए ये डालते
Whoever is talking right now, you need to mute yourself because it's yeah. Okay, thank you. It's just sometimes people forget to turn their mic off and then we can hear the conversations they're having with other people, and so it's a little distracting. So if you have any other questions on that exercise, it was done very quickly. It was a very brief one. On the actual courses that we teach, or when Phil will run this through, he will take longer to do it, will take time, reflect on it and so on. So that was just a little taster to give you a feel of it. Once you know how to do these things correctly, they become automatic, just like all sorts of other things we do automatically, tying your shoes, riding a bike, driving a car. Once you've practiced, you don't need to think about it, you just find yourself practicing. But in psychology, we talk about the fact that some of you may have heard this who study psychology, that typically it takes about 21 repetitions to build a simple habit. So that's why Phil mentioned 3 weeks. You know, if you do a particular practice and you do it daily, more than once a day if you can, with the technique I'm going to do with you later, is a very simple one that you can do many times a day, then it starts to become just learned behavior. Then your subconscious, your automatic nervous system can just run it for you, and then you don't have to stop and think about it. And then when you get proficient at these things, then you can start deciding which things work for you best and which at particular times. Wanted to mention a couple of other useful exercises that we've come across over the years. There's something called effective prayer. Some people might call this protective shield work, or sphere or bubble of light, where you put yourself into and visualize and imagine yourself being in a protective bubble of light. There are chakra meditations, sometimes using symbols. If any of you know Dr. Joe Dispenza, we'll mention him later. He encourages people to think of a symbol for each of the 7 chakras, and to he actually uses 8, but to put them in the symbol in there. You can use color. If you're doing the 7 chakras, you can use the colors of the rainbow. You can use sound, you can use mantras. There are so many different ways of doing things. And again, it's finding out what works for you. Some people have a power animal. Sometimes people activate that center that Phil was telling you to store the energy in, and have that guarded there by a powerful totem animal of some sort. And there's also breath work. Now, there is breath work in the 6 healing sounds, which we teach on the course. And we also teach basic grounding breath and breath for energizing and for cleansing. We think of it as psychic hygiene, so that you can do 20 connected breaths, and you can find that you actually are able to really boost your oxygen and energy levels. Whether you call it prana or chi, really doesn't matter. So those are all the sorts of things that we teach, practical exercises that people can do and then go away and see which they enjoy, which work for them best, and combine them once you're familiar with them. I want to also mention that there are various devices around. We mentioned this particular one because we've got them and we've used them for many years. Something called the HealthPoint here. And again, this is a bit of combining science with traditional practices, because the HealthPoint is one of those electrical devices, it runs on a battery, where you can actually apply it to the points on the meridian system. And there are 2 ways of doing that. One is by having a diagram or knowing what the meridian system is, making yourself familiar with it. The other is more intuitive, is going for wherever you feel that you need to and actually applying the current there. And you can play around with the intensity of the current. And you can find the ashi points, points where it sounds like something rude, and it feels a bit like that. We go, oh, ouch. And you can actually treat yourself. We've done that with many people as well as with ourselves, and people who've had mysterious aches and pains, arthritic pains, joint pains, etc., have found that they've gone away. We had somebody once in Bahrain, didn't we, who couldn't even climb the stairs. Her knees were so painful, and she had about a 45-minute session with the Health Point and was able to go up and down stairs again. So somebody else we knew, an old friend of ours, had gout, tremendously painful condition in the toes and the feet, and she, again, using the Health Point, was able to actually not only relieve that pain, but actually feel so good that she was able to go out for a walk, having not done it for ages. So these are ways that you can learn how to use these points, the acupuncture points, but instead of using acupressure like pushing or massaging, you could actually use this electrical frequency on a device. So they're there. We're not selling them. I'm just telling you about them because it's useful to know that there are now these combinations of science and the traditional. So I'm going to just mention EFT to you. As I just scroll down now, does anybody know about EFT? Anybody done any EFT at all? I'm just trying to get this, my pointer to work. Sorry, it's a bit stuck. So we've got Mohammed's got his hand up. Right, okay, got it working again now. Nobody else got their hand up, so maybe Mohammed's the only one. Okay, so I'm going to just briefly run through what EFT is. Again, we don't have time in a short webinar like this to do a whole practice. We do a practice session and teach the basic recipe on the course, the full course. But this is just to give you an overview. And EFT is basically taking the meridians, the 14 meridians Phil mentioned, but each one has a point where it's at the surface or near to the surface of the body, so that you can, obviously, you can access it by tapping or by touching. And in this system of EFT, it's a combination of psychology and meridian or acupuncture therapy. It means that you take a thought, like, so for example, if you had a thought, I have a pain, and you're feeling really physical pain, or you could have a thought that you feel really upset about something. You have a thought that you feel really stressed or anxious or phobic. In lockdown, a lot of people have had panic attacks or feelings of claustrophobia, a lot of bad feelings because of being shut indoors. So what you do is, and you've got a diagram there, but I will just adjust the screen a bit to demonstrate on myself. Okay, so you would take what's called the setup point. So the lung point here, you would rub it and at the same time say, even though I've got this stress, let's say, I'm talking about, say here, being claustrophobic, feeling panicky about being indoors. Even though I've got this claustrophobic feeling, I love and accept myself deeply and completely. Even though I've got this claustrophobic feeling, I love and accept myself deeply and completely. Even though I've got this claustrophobic feeling, I love and accept myself deeply and completely. So you do that 3 times, rubbing there, and then you go through. There are different ways of doing it. There's short forms and so on. I'll just show you the classic, what we call the basic recipe. Just a general one on the top of the head, the crown chakra here, this claustrophobic feeling. Then we go to the eyebrow point here, which is just on the inside, just where the tip of the eyebrow starts, from in the middle, just down from the third eye and over, the triangle on each eyebrow. And by the way, if anyone wants to know, you can do it on either side. Really doesn't matter, and you can swap midway, but you've got the same mirrors, the meridians are on both sides. So got this claustrophobic feeling, got this claustrophobic feeling, got this claustrophobic feeling, got this claustrophobic feeling, got this claustrophobic feeling. Now on the collarbone, got this claustrophobic feeling. You won't be able to see me because it's off screen, but below the nipple, it's called the point. People often miss that out because they feel embarrassed doing it, but for ladies, it's about where your bra touches the chest. For men, it's about 1 inch or so below the nipple, and you just tap there. Got this claustrophobic feeling. Then there's the under the armpit, and this is at the side, just under, just above where the lymph nodes are. Just tap on that, and I got this claustrophobic feeling. And then you actually tap on each of the fingers on the bit that's just next to the nail on the part that's facing you. If you've got your hand like that, flat, you can see me, that's it, okay? So you tap on the thumb, got this claustrophobic feeling. On the forefinger, the pointing finger, got this claustrophobic feeling. And the third finger, the middle finger, got this claustrophobic feeling. You can skip the ring finger, doesn't matter if you don't, you can skip it, you don't need to, because you'll be doing that on the back, that meridian. And on the little finger here, got that claustrophobic feeling. Then you've got the karate chop point, the side of your hand, got that claustrophobic feeling. And then we do, in the basic recipe, the traditional way of doing EFT, what we call the 9 gamut point. And that's where you actually take that bit between the outer knuckle and the next one along of your hand, just in from the indentation between the knuckles, and you tap on that. And what you do while you're tapping is you look down hard left, look down hard right, and you roll your eyes in a circle. One way, roll them back the other way, and then you do this funny thing where you hum. And we usually hum a little song like Happy Birthday that everybody knows. So while you're still tapping on the back of the hand, and then you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and again hum. Now that's the first round. Then you do the whole of the same thing again, but you do it just up until that karate chop point without doing what's called the 9 gamut point. Now, any of you who've studied mind-body systems, who know a bit about how the brain works, will know that one of the things you're doing with the 9 gamut exercise is you're doing cross-lateral. You're actually, when you're rolling your eyes around one way and the other, looking down one way, the other, when you go from humming to counting, back to humming, what you're doing is rapidly going between the right and left brain and their different functions. Now, if you were doing this as a real exercise, then what you would do is before you did that tapping, you would actually use what we call a SUDS meter. And that's where you actually just subjectively, and that's what SUDS stands for, subjective units of discomfort or dis-ease. So if you have that experience of being claustrophobic, in the case I gave the example of, you would have a look at the meter and say, on a scale of 0 to 10, how claustrophobic do I feel? How intense are those feelings? And you would see wherever it was, whether it be 9, 8, 7. And what you would do then is after you've done your 2 rounds of tapping, you would check on that scale again to see where am I now? And usually you'll find that there'll be a reduction, maybe 1 or 2 points. Sometimes people zoom to going, what claustrophobia? I don't feel that at all. And so we continue with the process whilst we actually shift. So what you're doing is essentially tapping on the meridians, each of which relates to an organ, each of which has its own emotion. And you're also doing a process of accepting yourself as you are and also releasing. And you can move on to other things as well. So it's a great system. It can be taught quite quickly. As I said, we teach it and practice it on the course that we run. But that's a brief overview, introduction on EFT. Has anybody got any questions on what I just said? As I said, there's a little diagram there. You can go online and see an 8-minute intro video. Yes, is that your hand up, Hira? You got a question?
Yes, ma'am, I've got a question. Sometimes I feel pain in my shoulders whenever I think much more about anything. So can you tell any acupressure point for that?
Now, the beauty of EFT, and thank you for asking that question because it allows me to explain, is that instead of going for matching up and finding which particular acupuncture points you need to do, that was, by the way, that was the original system of thought field therapy that Dr. Roger Callahan developed. He had a client who had a phobia of water. I won't go into the whole story, but whatever she'd had hypnotherapy, she'd had all sorts of things, and she still had this fear. And so he actually decided to try and track which acupuncture points might work for her to get rid of it. And so he played around with them, and it was a bit like the experience that was shared with us before, is he didn't really know quite why, but it worked, and she stopped being afraid of water. Now, Gary Craig, who developed EFT, said that could be quite lengthy, quite time-consuming, therefore quite expensive, to have to work out which of all the many, many meridian points on those 14 meridians, each has got loads and loads of points. So that could take a long time of eliminating which worked and which didn't. So he came up with a bright idea. If you take all 14 meridians and you tap on each one of them, it's going to put energy into that meridian, which would cover all of them. So that's why we do that whole, as you can see there on the screen, those points in the basic recipe, if you do all of those, you have actually covered whichever one it was. So you would take, say, that pain in your shoulder, and you would do a checkout, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10 at the moment, how is that feeling of pain in my shoulder? Or if I can imagine the last time I had it and remember that and feel that pain and see where it is. And then you would go through that whole sequence that we just did. And then at the end of the 2 rounds, you would check and see, How is the pain in my shoulder now? It's gone down, brilliant. If you'd like it to go down some more, you do a bit more of the tapping. So it could be used, it's a generic tool. It can be used on anything. Now, of course, as you get to practice things and get better at them, you start to recognize, there's a particular point just feels right. When I get that pain in my shoulder, I just tap on the collarbone point like that. I start to feel relief immediately. So you can then start to even more shortcut it, make it even more elegant and tailor it to you. But the whole point of the EFT sequence is you're going to get everything. You're going to activate every one of those meridians by tapping on all 14 of those points. Does that answer your question sufficiently for now, Hira?
Thank you. It was a quite informative session. Thank you for telling. So nice of you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so we'll move on from the EFT. And I think Phil will come back now here and talk about the intuitive side of things. Whoops, it's just slipped again.
Okay. The shares with wheels. So we did the sort of traditional ideas, and then later looked at how some more sort of modern ideas and scientific ideas have come across to match up with those. We're going to look at the intuitive now. The reason we do it this way is because there are three main areas that people understand this field through. And the first is that they have some sort of tradition. Like we talked to Majid, and he'd done this work with the healing Tao kind of system and with other systems that were related to martial arts and so on. People either come through one of these things that already exists, often yoga and meditation, or maybe again martial arts, or maybe some traditional medicine of some kind. So they come through that kind of pathway, or there are people who are just intuitive. They just experience it and they don't necessarily know anything about it, and then they have to find out about it. There are many interesting stories and many people like this. We've just picked a favourite here to give an example of a classic, really. This is Donna Eden. And Donna Eden, by the time she was 20, she had most of the illnesses that you expect people of about 70 or 80 to have. She had heart problems, she had arthritis, she had rheumatism, she had just about everything. She had a heart attack when she was still, I think, in her teens, which is pretty rare. So everything was wrong with Donna, and she tried everything she could. She tried, regular medicine, what we call allopathic medicine, stuff your doctor does, and stuff they do at the hospital. She tried allopathic medicine, then she tried all of the alternatives, and she went through homeopathy and acupuncture and nutrition, and you name it, she tried it. And nothing seemed to actually fix it for her. So eventually she went and she lived alone and grew her own organic vegetables and all that kind of thing. And she just spent all of her free time every day exploring her own energy, which is noticing how she felt, noticing if she moved a certain way or did a certain thing. This might be relevant for Majid as well, this kind of attitude of self-observation, to just really notice what was going on in her system. I say system, I should say systems, because it's emotional, psychological and physical, and other things, but they're probably the three main ones. So Donna then, she found that she could see and feel this energy moving within her and around her. And if you look at this, this is the way, or it will be when I get there. There we are. Right, this is how Donna experiences it and sees it. And as you can see, it's not at all organized. You can't really see chakras there. You can't really see meridians there. This is her personal experience. This is how she experiences it. And this is how she sees it in other people. So Donna went on to developing a system to be able to actually teach other people to do that, to be able to deal with their own energy blockages and so on. So she's also interesting to look at, and is a good example of somebody who is just completely intuitive, didn't learn anything, didn't do anything, it just happened, and then she took it from there. So now we're going to have a look at the purely scientific approach. Now, this is the new kid on the block. They've always been intuitives, they've always been people who just did feel something, or just saw something, sometimes that other people, usually other people could see or feel or hear and so on. And there have always been traditional systems where people could become a disciple or a student and they could learn the discipline and so on. So the scientific thing is more recent. So, and this is where people are actually scientifically testing things and finding out if they pass the test. So some of the key names for us are Selden and Becker, James Oshman, Lynn McTaggart, Joe Dispenza, there's the Heart Math Institute, and there are various kinds of biofeedback. Now, we're just going to briefly, as with all these things, we're going to look at a couple of these. This is the seminal book from Selden and Becker. They are two researchers into electromagnetism in the body, and their starting point was the fact that there are many lizards, geckos for instance, are one of these, where if you chop off their tail, I don't recommend you do this, but if they lose their tail, another animal eats it, or if they are trying to run away and the animal or the human catches hold of it, their tail just falls off, and then they grow it back again. And there are a number of lizards who can grow back their arms, legs, various other things. And Selden and Becker's viewpoint was basically, well, if they can do it, why can't we? And they began to study the electromagnetic fields in the human body as well as in animal bodies, and they found certain things, certain similarities. They went on to do all kinds of interesting work. And if you like this angle, this book is a must. Some things came out of this, like in Sweden, they found that they could grow back. People who had, say, lost the tip of the finger or thumb could grow it back completely if they put it in an electromagnetic field of a certain frequency. Unfortunately, everybody's preoccupied with viruses at the moment, so the sort of thing isn't getting much funding. But some very promising starts were made. Now, this is Lynn McTaggart, and again, this is a seminal work. Lynn looked at all the research that had been done on this kind of thing over probably on energy fields and electromagnetism over about 100 years or so. She came up with something, she's done lots of good work, she came up with something early on called the intention experiment. And what she did is she said, what is it possible for people to influence things outside of themselves by focusing their mental energy on them? And the answer seems to be yes. Other people have subsequently followed up on this, somebody called Dawson Church, for instance, done some interesting experiments. The Chinese have done experiments with this. But what Lynn did is she had people focus on a plant growing. If you got enough people focusing on a plant growing, it actually put on a spurt of growth and grow a bit faster. And the interesting thing is it did. But she wasn't happy with that. What she did is she got thousands and thousands and thousands of people to all focus on the same plant at the same time. People all over the world all had to synchronize. But what she did is she put the plant into a chamber that was lead lined, you know, in the military and in some spheres of space research and so on. They use chambers which no frequency whatsoever can get through. Any frequency, however high or low, cannot get into these chambers because they need them to be completely protected to do their experiments. So Lynn got hold of one of these, as did Selden and Becker, and she put the plant in the middle of one of these and had thousands of people all over the world focused, and the plant suddenly grew more than you would expect it to grow. It suddenly grew. So that gets interesting. Now there's lots of other stuff that develops around that, tons of it in the book. But she came up with the idea of the 0 point field. That's something which is there everywhere, all the time, in everybody, in everything, and that if there are ways we can find to tap into that and work with that, then it might be that all kinds of useful new things start to happen. You may have experienced some of this yourselves. Many people have, sometimes by accident. And then the other thing that's interesting to look at is in training brainwaves. Now, there are many ways that this can be done. We've got a list of some of them down the bottom there. Many ways that you can entrain your brainwaves. In other words, to get your brainwaves to go into other useful frequencies. So mostly people are on beta, which is just, you know, constantly jumping around and moving around. Alpha is deeper and slower and is a good one for learning. Theta is deeper and slower still. And finally, delta, which is for most people only ever experienced in deep sleep, and they're unconscious, so they don't know they're experiencing it. But that is the deepest state, and that's the state in which your body repairs itself, and all sorts of interesting chemical processes go on. That's why we all wake up. That's why we wake up in the morning, you know, refreshed to some degree. I know some people don't so much, but refreshed to some degree and repaired. Because if we didn't have that, if we didn't go into delta at least once a day, we would actually just wear ourselves out quite quickly. And this is just an example. It's a simple experiment you can do with your friends and family. If you get somebody who has a problem, who has some kind of health issue or whatever, get a bunch of people to stand in the way that's described here. And this is the work of James Oshman. who also, his book is also called Energy Medicine, even though it's different from Dana's book. Get people to stand in a circle and entrain their brainwave frequencies. That is to say, for everybody to get into a good frequency themselves, and at the same time to all have the same frequency. So this can be done very simply. All you have to do is chant together, or sing together, or dance together, or laugh together, or preferably do all of those things in sequence. Once you've done that for a little while, for 10, 15 minutes or whatever, you will find that you are, when they measure people's brain waves, they find they have the same frequencies. What this also does is stimulates your electromagnetic energy. And if you then form a circle with a person in between, the person on one end of the circle and one end on the other, then your electrical energy, in some ways, there's nothing mysterious about this. It simply is a form of electricity. Your electrical energy will be transmitted through that person, and they will, to some degree. Now, I say to some degree because there's tremendous variation. It depends how sick they are. It depends how receptive they are. It depends how well trained and powerful the people in the circle are. But like I say, get together with your friends and relatives and try this one.
And if you get a chance, we have one that I think it's got lost or broken in move, but you can actually buy something called an energy ball, and we used to use that in our face-to-face courses. We just get people to stand in a circle and literally just touch the skin of the person next to them, usually by holding hands, and then have a ball. It's actually just got a little battery in it, so it can actually be turned on. And this ball, sorry, it's got a battery, it's got a little electrodes on it. So when you actually make a circle and people touch, when they touch, someone touches the ball and everyone touches each other. So there's a circuit. Only one person has to just break the circuit by breaking hands with the person that they're touching, etc. And the thing goes off. As soon as you all touch, the ball lights up and makes a buzzing sound. So this is actual electromagnetic energy. We're not talking about something psychic or subjective. We're talking about something you can actually demonstrate, that we run on electricity and also on water, which I'm going to come to in a moment. So the electrical bit's very interesting. We've touched on that with the acupuncture and with the HealthPoint and with some of these energy exercises. If we have a look at the water part of it, called this bit the power of vibrations, and that could be sounds, it could be words, it could be images. The interesting thing is that everything that we do, say, see, has some kind of frequency, some kind of vibration. That's how, I won't get technical, Phil could do this better than me because he used to work with people who were deaf and hearing impaired, and you can actually find out that it's the vibration that reaches your ear that then gets translated into sound. With our eyes, it's the vibration of the light. So we're running on these frequencies, these electrical energies, but also the water. So here we've got someone, he's passed away now, but Professor Emoto, a Japanese professor, and what he did was he found a way to freeze water really quickly, little droplets of water, freeze them. And what he found was interesting was that water forms these crystalline formations when it's frozen, and a bit like snowflakes, you see snowflakes. And he was really interested in the idea of how could we affect, was there an effect on water if it received different kinds of vibration? And mostly initially he used sound and words, but went on later to pictures and things as well. And his book was a very successful book, you may have come across it, called The Hidden Messages in Water. And I'm just going to show you a few slides quite quickly now to show you the different patterns that he found when he looked at the water that was frozen under electron microscope to see what kind of shape the water had formed. Was it symmetrical? Was it not? In terms of how it related to the sound of the voice, the words that were spoken. So here we've got a couple here. This is thank you. And he found that consistently in many different languages, the words thank you actually enabled water to form these crystalline shapes that you can see. That's the Japanese one. That's when German, Dankeschön or Danke is said to the water. And again, look at the fact that there are patterns and symmetry in these. This is thank you also said in French and in Korean. So we've got different shapes going with the different languages, but all of them forming symmetrical shapes, shapes we might find very pleasing or beautiful. And we've got English and Italian as well. Now, if we move on to Okay, so I've got my screen blocked there. So the words are "you fool," so an insult. Japanese, this is what the water crystal looked like. You can see it's not symmetrical. It's looking quite chaotic. It hasn't got a proper center to it. And in English, this is what it looks like. Quite unpleasant, almost like you're looking at some kind of microscope version of a virus or something like that. The word Satan in Japanese, we had this, and haven't got it on here, but what's interesting is that the word Satan had a very similar effect when they said, when they put the water in a microwaves or next to a computer, and the sorts of devices that emit electromagnetic frequencies that we know are not particularly healthy for people and might even be downright dangerous. They form very similar images. So you have this big dark center and then this kind of fragmented outside to it. How about this one? You make me sick, I will kill you. No center, no symmetry to it, and some odd little pictures there. You can make your own minds up about what those pictures look like to you. Then we've got, there's actually a video of this, as well as the photographs of the water crystals, a polluted lake. Before there was a healing prayer. And by the way, it so happened they did a Buddhist healing prayer. It could have probably been any kind of healing prayer, chanting, singing, anything at all that was good for the brainwave entrainment that Phil was showing the slide of before. So that's what the water looked like when you took water from the polluted lake. Then, after they spent some time, and I don't think it was very long, was it 20, 30 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Period of time where a lot of people stood around and they chanted. They did Buddhist healing prayer chants, and that, when they took the samples, was what the water looked like after. So again, if you relate this to the energy psychology idea, if, as is true, that most of us are made up between 70 and 80% of water, what is that actually doing to us if we're thinking really negative thoughts about ourselves or about others? We're imagining gloom and doom scenarios. Again, if you think of the sorts of programming that we're getting at the moment, where everything, it's syringes, it's jabs, it's shots, it's sickness, it's that big blobby, weird cartoony looking thing that we're told is the coronavirus. I mean, it's actually not, it's somebody's idea of what it might look like. Now, if those are the things we're carrying in ourselves, what are we doing to the water in our body that's circulating? I'll leave you with, whoops, on this one. This is a water crystal, which is actually being shown a picture now, removed from sound, of a dolphin. So a dolphin picture is actually put on the water, and then the water, he takes a tiny amount, freezes it, and that's what it looks like. And again, I find this interesting because if you look at that central, it looks a bit like a mind map, if you know what a mind map looks like, or a series of the brain when we've got our neuroplasticity of the brain. If you look at that, it's interesting to reflect on the fact that dolphins communicate through ultrasound. So just think about that. What's happening to that water that's picking up something from the picture of a dolphin and producing that? So we're going to move on to one more that's, in this case, we've chosen because of the relationship with the breath, but also, again, this health, healing, energy, psychology, that's to do with boosting the immune system. And so I'll hand over to Phil again.
Okay, now you may have heard of this guy. If you haven't, you should. He's become famous in certain areas. He's in the, we've included him in the scientific bit because people have researched what he has been able to change in the way his body functions as a result of a certain breathing technique. And he's been studied so far by Stanford University and also by some university in Holland, whose name I can never remember because it's Dutch. And I find it extremely hard to pronounce and remember. But you can always check this yourself. But he's been studied by the two different universities to find out if what he claimed he could do is true. So on the screen here, you've got basically his story in miniature, which is that after this thing happened to him, this intense grief, he started seeking a way to get beyond his grief. And what he found was, in the first place, it was being alone. And in the second place, it was doing extreme physical activities. And in the third place, it was learning how to deal with cold, learning how to deal with intense cold. Now, that might sound strange. How would somebody come to those three things? But he had already been for a long time a student and practitioner of yoga, and had also been doing extreme sports and other things. He'd also been a guide and caving and if you breathe in a certain way, this is as simple as it gets, if you breathe in a certain way, two things happen. One, you generate heat in your body, and two, that you are able to burn out viruses and bacteria in your body. Now that's, in a way, is not surprising, because everybody knows probably that's why you have fever. When you have a fever, you increase your ability to burn out pathogens by approximately 30 times. So it so happens that he was able to do that simply with a breathing technique. And what he's become sort of well known for, you can see all these people lying around in the snow. This is the kind of thing that he's become well known for, is being able to swim in the Arctic under the snow, to be able to sit for long periods of time amidst ice and snow. And not only does he not catch a cold, not only does he not get flu, but he's actually better. He's better off, his immune system is better as a result of doing this. So this is it's especially interesting to me because there's a technique in Tibetan Buddhism, a Tibetan yoga technique, which is very, very old and is called Tummo, which is generating internal heat. And for a long time, some Tibetan monks have developed this because it's quite useful to develop that if you live in somewhere that's as cold as Tibet. It's almost a requirement. If you're going to sit still for a long time meditating, you need to protect yourself. So what they developed this thing, but very, very few people have ever been able to teach it or to develop it or to do it themselves beyond, a few obscure Tibetan monks. Now this guy who is Dutch just did it. And as he says, what I'm capable of, anyone can learn. One of the big tests with Wim Hof was they injected him with a bacterium which would cause fever and would give various symptoms which weren't really harmful but would just be unpleasant and uncomfortable. And they injected him with this, and then nothing happened. He just didn't get any symptoms at all. Nothing changed in his body whatsoever. And they said, okay, that's interesting, but you must be a freak. So he said, well, give me some people to train and I'll show you that anyone can do this. So they did. They got a couple of groups of people who are all the same age, the same sex, the same physical condition, etc., etc. And half of them did the Hof technique for a few weeks, just a few weeks, it was like 2-3 weeks. And the other half did nothing at all. They carried on as normal. When they injected them with the bacterium, the guys who had done the technique didn't get any bad effects, and the people who had not done the technique all got sick. So that proved fairly quickly that we can change our energy, and we can change it quite dramatically in a very short time if we can just find the right thing to do. So that's one of the right things to do.
Okay. We've nearly finished our slides now, so we'd like to just mention to you Dr. Joe Dispenza. If you haven't come across Dr. Joe, it's very well worthwhile. He actually did come to Dubai, not this January, but the previous January, just before the lockdown and so on happened. A number of our graduates on our recommendation went to work with him. We were supposed to go to be with him in Spain in April, but because of the lockdown, that all got cancelled. But we regularly have been doing his practices for many years now. And what we like about Dr. Joe is that I don't have time to go into the whole story, but he himself was one of those miracle people, a bit like the Miracle Man and The Secret and others that you may have heard of, and that we've certainly come across a couple of people in real life that we know who've done this, who've been told they'll never walk again, that they're paralyzed for life, etc., because they've been badly injured, which is what happened to him. But they actually healed themselves, they repaired themselves. Some have used EFT, some have used breathwork. In Dr. Joe's case, what he did was visualized and imagined repairing his spine, putting his vertebra back together again, which was easy for him to visualize because he would recently qualified as a chiropractor when this happened, so he was able to visualize very clearly. And within a matter of a couple of months, he was actually not only paralyzed for life, but up and about and going back to the gym and getting back fit. Because he'd been doing Ironman training before. Dr. Joe has moved on along from there, and what he teaches, and people like Deepak Chopra and others refer to, is quantum healing. And what he's interested in is how we can take ourselves out of the subconscious ego state where we're repeating the old patterns of the past, our negative thoughts and emotions that we keep recycling, and that we actually train ourselves to take the energy to the centers of the body where we can use healing, where we can do mantras, we can visualize, we can do all sorts of things. And it's all about stimulating the pineal and pituitary gland, getting the hormones working. And what he does that Phil and I particularly love, because we really like things that are empirically demonstrated, is that nowadays when he does his healing sessions, they take people's blood samples, urine samples, even DNA samples. And now they've started actually measuring the electromagnetic frequency in the room before, during, and after the sessions. So they can actually have a record that's quantifiable by these physical and biological indicators that somebody is better, is feeling better, and they've had a number of healings spontaneous. Usually they've taken maybe a year or two for the really serious conditions, but people who've had so-called terminal conditions or incurable conditions who've actually become well. So Joe Dispenza is somebody who's worth checking out. This idea that we can actually change our genetic makeup, we can change ourselves, which fits with what's happening nowadays in the field of epigenetics, where they're saying no longer are we just stuck with the DNA we were born with, we can actually change particularly the protein elements of our DNA so that we can change our propensity to genetic conditions, even illnesses. So there's one more slide. Oh, sorry, I was meant to have that one up while I was talking to you. Okay, yeah, experience-dependent genes activated when there's growth, healing, or learning, and behavioral state-dependent genes that are influenced during stress, emotional arousal, or dreaming. So that's Dr. Joe Dispenza, a number of very famous books. Particularly, we'd recommend You Are the Placebo and Becoming Superhuman, because they actually, they give you a summary of some of the research and the empirical data that he's got. So I'd like to do an experiential brief one before we finish. And so this is about the simplest it gets. Hopefully you won't be confused by this at all. And I'm going to run you through it. I'll leave the slide up, but I'll ask you to just go along with me before you try and read the slide and get your head involved in thinking about it too much. So just sit comfortably in your chair and allow your eyes to close down. And just like Phil said, if you can see me still, it means your eyes are open. So just close your eyes down. And when you can't see me, you've got a pretty good idea your eyes are closed. And then what I'd like you to do is to say to yourself in your mind the word stop. And immediately take in a deep breath. And as you breathe out, just check out your face, all those stress points around your eyes and around your cheek and jaw, neck, shoulders, arm and hands. Just let them go and relax as you breathe out. And now when you're ready, just take another deep breath in. And this time, as you breathe out, you can just relax down the front and back of your body, right down through your legs and your knees and past your ankles into your feet. And then just for a moment, just imagine beneath your feet, there's a great big magnet or vacuum that can just go and just draw out of you any tension or tightness, any physical discomfort, any bothersome thoughts, anything you'd like to just let go of now. Let it flow out through the soles of your feet into the ground away from you. And then just take a few moments of mind quiet and focus on anything at all that you like. Whether it's the cuckoo clock making cuckoo noises, or whether it's a thought of someone you love, a child, smiling face, a place that you love to be. If you want relaxation, think of something really relaxing, maybe lying by the sea and listening to the sound of the waves. Or it could be that you want to be energized because you're feeling a bit tired, a bit lacking in energy right now. Imagine doing something really vigorous and energizing that gives you a buzz, gives you a bit of that, oh, get up and go feeling. And just spend a few moments as you're breathing quietly, taking a few moments of mind quiet to just think about anything at all that you enjoy, that makes you feel good. And when you're ready, you can do what we did with a smile, in the smile technique. Just bring your hands together. You don't have to do this, but it's quite a nice way to end when you close your eyes and rub them together so the palm generates some warmth and energy, and then just put them over your eyes so that when you come back into the room, it's nicer for your eyes to just come back into bright light when they come back gently into the room. This is the stop technique. It's the fastest technique that I've ever found. I learned a bit of it in its original state many years ago, but I've added to it and changed it a little bit. And this is what we would call, if any of you know about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, we'd call that a pattern interrupt. I've called it there on the slide, rebooting your neck-top computer. Just like, you know, when your computer freezes, it happened to me, I think it was earlier today on my phone, wasn't it? And I just switched it off, switched it back on again, and it started working again. So sometimes we get so much overload, so much thinking, so much multitasking goes on that the system just crashes or freezes. We get into the stress response state. As soon as you find that's happening, then the stop technique is a great one to do. But a bit like Phil was saying about the inner smile, don't wait until you're stressed. Don't wait until something's happening. Practice it regularly. I encourage people to set their alarms to go off once every hour or two in the day, to just make a nice sound, and then they do the stop technique. If you just do the shortest possible version of it, you can do it in 20 to 30 seconds, which actually is the gap that you've got between where the stress response kicks in and when you can actually stop it before it takes over and you go into the flight or fight mode. So you've got a couple more minutes, you could spend a bit longer. If you get practiced in this and you do it repeatedly and regularly, you build a habit, you don't even need to close your eyes. You can be in a meeting, and I've been in plenty of really boring meetings, especially in the days when I was working in universities and so on. You can just switch off and be in your own nice relaxed space while everyone's doing their thing that you might not find very useful otherwise. Instead of getting stressed, you just relax and stop the plate spinning, just take that time out. So that's another takeaway from you that you can take with you today. And I'm going to put the last slide up now, which is just about perfect timing for when we're due to end. So I just want to say there is this course that we're running in the weekend of the 18th, 19th of June. For those of you who've enjoyed the taster and would really like to have more, 2 really intense packed days, but where we have time for actually practicing, for reflecting, for covering in more depth so that you can do yourselves the key things that we've talked about during this presentation and take those away with you. We'll give you the references, the books, the videos, links, things that you can follow up for yourself. And if you complete the course, then you will receive a certificate in the Foundations of Energy Psychology. So that's being run by us. We're working in partnership with Illuminations. So those of you who come through Illuminations, you register through them. And those who are our own contacts from the meetup groups of our own or from other courses we've run, then you contact us about registering. So that's what we're offering you. But now we'd like to say, if any of you need to leave, that's fine. We quite understand. But if any of you got any other questions or anything you'd like to share with us, I'll call Phil back over, he can sit next to me as well, then please feel free to do so. But if you need to go now, thanks for attending, thanks for participating. And those of you, as I said, who've got any questions or maybe answers that we don't have, then you can chip in now, please feel free. One of the things about not having pictures on screen is that I can't tell if people have gone off into la-la land by doing a closed eye technique or process. I hope you're all still awake and aware. No questions? Nothing to share, nothing to ask? Okay, not that you have to, but we're here, as I said, for a moment if you have a sort. Right, Hira, you raised your hand. Please go ahead, unmute yourself. And
you have cleared everything very much better. I only want to praise it. Was a very informative session, and hands off to both of you. You have cleared it very efficiently. It was a great session.
You're saying we've helped to clear your depression?
Yeah, of course, it was very helpful.
It was very helpful. That's great. That's really good. Anything in particular you were feeling depressed just before we started today, or been feeling that way for a while? Anything?
Yeah, during that I was feeling very, very tense now. It was like the whole scenario changed. Like now I'm feeling very lightly by attending your session. It's an honor.
Oh, thank you very much. It's always an honor and a pleasure for us to have people come that can very quickly and easily get benefits just by realizing the way that we use our energy, the way we use our mind, the way we focus, the way we think and feel can make a huge difference to our experiences. You know, something I'd like to say here is that may be useful to others to hear as well, is that it's been very popular for the last 30 years or so in psychology, in medicine aspect of it, not the healing part of it, to actually talk about brain chemistry and how people are depressed and they've got this condition and that disorder. You know, if kids want to run around, oh, they've got attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. If people feel a bit down, they've got depression because of their brain chemistry. And actually what we like people to realize, because it's very empowering, is that your brain chemistry changes all the time. If you think about sad things, unhappy things, I think Phil said earlier, you know, our brain, our subconscious mind, which is most of our thinking and feeling is going on in the subconscious part of our brain, 95 to 99% of us, then actually it doesn't know the difference between what's really happening on the outside and what's happening on the inside. So if you can change that representation, if you can change the thoughts and the feelings, focus on good energy, focus on things that make you feel happy, make you feel good, it will actually change the chemistry in your brain. You start to produce the happy hormones, you start to produce the, you know, the serotonin and the kinds of chemicals in your body and your mind and your brain that make you feel really good. So if we've helped you to do that, I'm really pleased to know that. And if you want more, as I said, either come on the course or get in touch with us, and we'll do our best to support you in knowing what you could do to continue that process.
Yeah, I want to ask only one thing.
Go ahead.
I get motivated for sometimes whenever I listen to motivational speeches or listen to any psychological related, but that motivation goes down the very next day. When it comes to implementing the things, I am very low at it. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I have been trying from many days, but I do understand the things and get motivated. But when it comes to implement the things, I'm very low.
It's what we call it's called the assimilation phase, you know. So you start out enthusiastic. This happens in coaching a lot, or people start going to the gym or they do their New Year's resolutions and they start out, as you said, very motivated, good energy. And this is the thing, the secret to this is what I was talking about before, which is the entrainment of your brain to actually practice certain things over a period of time. Doesn't need to be a really long time, that actually changes the brain. The neuroplasticity of the brain means that we can form new habits, but there are some techniques, some ways of thinking about things are more powerful and effective than others. So our speciality is getting people to work with the unconscious. Phil sometimes refers to it as coaching the unconscious mind, you know, instead of just learning at one level, which we do need. We obviously need to have our values and our conscious minds. But if 95 to 99% is just running on old programs, old beliefs and so on, I think personally, probably like many people, that's where you lose your motivation. You start out enthusiastic, you mean well, and then you kind of go off the boil. So the thing is to use the techniques, be they energy techniques, self-hypnosis, meditation, the things that take you into the alpha, down into the theta and the delta states, so that you can reprogram yourself to have different behavior, different beliefs. And that is extremely effective. It only really takes anything between 3 weeks to maybe 6-8 weeks. And as long as you do daily practices, you can actually change the neural pathways so that they will do them automatically. So if you can stick with it and build the habit, then the old habit just falls away. You know, I was talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks about the fact that the neurons that fire together wire together. Once you do something repeatedly, it starts to form a neural pathway, and then it starts to happen, just like, you know, climbing upstairs or riding a bike. In the beginning, it probably took you a while to learn it. Once you got it, that was it. It stayed there. So you've got all that stuff you've done already inside of you. It's just a question of reactivating it and finding ways to maybe keep it going. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Phil?
No, I think you said it all there, really. So get something that you do. Just get something. There are many, many techniques for this. You know, some people like to just put post-it up everywhere to remind them. But get something that you do, and always do it. Because after 3 weeks, then it will become a habit, and then everything will become much easier.
Does that help, Hira?
Yes, it was quite informative. Thanks again, ma'am and sir.
Good. You're very welcome. Now, those others that are still with us, we've got Mick, I think, still with us, and I don't know if there's anybody else. If you haven't got anything else to ask, we'll say our goodbyes now. If you have, what I'm just going to do is to, I'm just going to pop into the, oh, where's my chat room? Ah, there we go. Okay, I'm just going to put an email address here. Okay, so if anyone wants to contact myself or Phil, I'll just put one in there. Then you can do that. If you've got any questions about particular references or information, or just want to ask a bit more about anything that we've talked about, then you can write to me there. And I'll put up my WhatsApp number too. Okay, so hope that's been helpful. Thank you for those who've posted little comments in the chat room. A couple of people said they have to leave, but looking forward to being in touch. Wishing us peace. That's lovely. Thanks for an informative session. And someone, you know, this often happens. Someone's asked, hi, do we get a certificate for this? No, you don't get a certificate for coming on a free webinar, but you do get a certificate if you do a course that you participate in and that you pay for. Then yes, you definitely do. Okay, so thanks again to everyone for coming along. Phil and I'll say goodbye to you from Morocco to Dubai, wherever you are in the world, and I hope to be in touch with you soon. Bye for now.
Goodbye, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Ma'am, I want to ask that can I message you off and on whenever I need you or something haunts me?
What was that? Sorry, I didn't.
I want to ask that can I contact you when anything haunts me or I have to ask something?
I'm not hearing you very well, but as I said, you can either, we're going to go out of the meeting now, so if you haven't got the email address, just you can contact Illuminations and ask them to put you in touch if there's anything in particular. You know, this is referring you on to other things. And also, again, remember, we've got the course coming up soon, so that would be a great opportunity to spend 2 full days total immersion in all this stuff with Phil and myself, with a small group of dedicated people. So I'm going to close the meeting down now because I think it's been live streaming and they've been recording it. If anyone missed any that's still with us now, you can actually ask Illuminations for recording of the session so that you can revisit it if you want to. So again, bye from us and thanks for attending.